if you make this just an IT thing, it's not going to work. I've talked to CTOs and CIOs. We're trying out OpenAI. We're trying these other
Right.
tools. I'm using this. We're doing some pilots. We're using Copilot. How's it going? I can't get the use cases from the business side.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Buildings 2.0, a podcast that highlights some of the rising voices around the built environment. My guest today is Maribeth Martorana. She's the founder and CEO of Sapient Advisors, a CFA who spent years building financial data at places like FactSet, Moody's, before turning that lens on real estate. She's got a pointed take on AI in the built world that the winners won't be necessarily the fastest adopters, but they're going to be the most disciplined operators. And so I want to get into that. But Maribeth, appreciate you joining.
No, thank you for having me, Jose. This is an honor to be here and talk to you about what is happening, what we see in organizations in financial services, insurance, and commercial real estate, which is our focus. I I've been this data nerd for years, and now it's come full circle where, for AI, you need data and vice versa. And I'm working with a group of people that we have done this at large organizations and small organizations and startups. And we saw a need in the market that people are going to need help, especially in the middle markets where they're going to need to have a really good foundation so that they can be successful in their digital transformation. And we are excited to work with these folks.
I want to pull that thread. So what is happening in that middle market? I mean, what are you seeing? Is it that there's this kind of wave of tsunami that folks are trying to figure out what the hell do I do here?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go back to like last year, actually, and give a
Yeah.
little bit of history. So when we started Sapient about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we focused a little bit more on the startup world. But when we started seeing what was happening with OpenAI and the big frontier model players, there were a couple of announcements that happened last summer with OpenAI in particular. And the big one was you need to have $10 million or more revenues with us for consulting services. So that shuts out a lot of companies, right? Secondly, talking to a number of folks in the market who were building agentic platforms for customers, they were having a really hard time getting the requirements and the use cases from the business. So there we saw this problem where you have the business, right, knows that they need to do something, want to do something. Here you have people who are trying to build products or build solutions for them, and they're not able to get what they need to help them solve their solution. So we saw that having worked in product and developing systems inside and outside of organizations, that we're able to work with them with like our agile and design thinking methods to get that collaboration going and to get those use cases so we can inform a roadmap and get them onto their AI journey with that. So that's where this kind of genesis happened for us to focus on that. And we're still seeing it in the market with folks. I mean, there's executives really need a toolkit so that they can navigate this with confidence and it's not really an AI. I tell people that the solution shouldn't be chasing the problem, and we have to start with the business strategy, and then everything else aligns with that, and we can formulate a crawl, walk, run to have successful pilots, a roadmap, and then ultimately production and scale with these
Yeah.
solutions. So
Are you
yeah.
are you seeing a through line in the businesses that you talk to? In my view, I think what AI has shown me, and I think the business and our own operation is that you could effectively boil a lot of things down to like how do we ingest information, how do we process information, and then like how do we control what comes out? In your view, like what are you seeing across perhaps different sectors, different businesses? Is there a recurring theme? Is it just all over the place? What are you saying?
I think there is a recurring theme, which I will say is, let's say, you have your own internal documents or proprietary data. It could be documents, right? It could be offering memorandums. It could be prospectuses. It could be deal memos. It could be market research you've done on comparables and all that, right? Your own CRM data, your SharePoint, all that. Then there can be external data sources, right? And so you want to use that data with your own proprietary data. And then there's a model, and then there's a user experience, whatever that may be. So it may be with commercial real estate, it might be underwriting and due diligence process that you want to go and a use case. But what I've seen over and over again is your own content, your own internal data, what you do for your business, bringing that together, right, to then either help increase revenues, operational efficiency, risk mitigation, and a better customer experience so that you can achieve your business outcomes. So it's always those components that you need to work with. And then throughout all organizations, there's also the governance layer and there's also the change management as well that needs to be done holistically throughout.
I'm thinking out loud here, but I just want to use an example. So I'm a commercial real estate developer. And I'm asking myself, in the age of AI, how do I differentiate myself? And so when everyone has access to the same reasoning models, intelligence itself becomes a bit commoditized, which then begs the question, what kind of
Mhm.
unique data do you have? So does it boil down to just like what competitive advantage do you have in like capturing or creating new kinds of data? Like how do you see this? Like how does a firm like mine differentiate?
Sure. I think first of all, you probably have a history of data, right? Already, right? You probably have from being in business, whatever number of years, you have your CRM, you have your emails, you have your presentations, you have all those that information, right? And then you have the external data sources. What also you have, and I do believe that there's it's the data, the human element, and the AI comes all together, like an intersection. And there's always what call that special sauce or that alpha that only you have. Now there is a lot of discussion about this, but what can you do different? You do also want to think about your digital identity and whether you're going to use a large language model versus small language models, which people are using as well. Also, whether you're going to have an on-prem solution versus in the cloud, which is happening. I do see people definitely thinking about the data privacy and security, and also thinking about what goes into these models with the frontier model providers. And some of them are building their own models, open source or small language models, which I'm not sure if you've kind of followed in the last week what Alex Karp has been talking about, which I mean, I think others of us who have been in the industry have been saying people are going to want to move things, and mitigate their risk by not being locked into one model provider, because then all your data is going up into that model, and you want to protect who
Right.
you are and your alpha. So yes,
Yeah. Is the logical kind of continuation of that argument that we're effectively all kind of going towards these like localized models in our devices, or do you see it differently?
well, it may be your device, or it may be what using a small language model or an open source model. So, our CTO, yes, we work with, large language models as well as small language models. We also have various providers with their technologies. And one of our providers, I mean, we even have where they can actually take using the different models and the agents, and we actually can put them on a server and plug it in just like an appliance. I'm not surprised to see this happening, having worked, heavily in not only real estate, but also with asset managers and hedge funds. I think basically, some of the very smart folks on the street were saying even when OpenAI started, I don't want my questions going into this model. That's my IP, my thinking. I think though others have started to catch up on that thinking, and I've seen already, at least in financial services, folks building their own models. It always starts with the hedge funds and then it goes to the asset managers. And now it's happening in other verticals and sectors as well. And I think that's going to continue. I don't think the jury's not completely out. I was actually looking at a podcast the other day and someone was talking about there could be a server on each employee's desk, literally with your small language models, and then a laptop that would hook up to that. So if you think about it, it would be a distributed throughout the organization. And you could even get to that point. So I never thought we would be going back to on-prem potentially, but and also, and with what's going on with edge devices and edge computing, which is necessary, you need the small language models for that, is pretty exciting though to be able to do that.
So walk me through here. You and I are kind of designing going back to kind of the commercial real estate development firm here. We're designing it from scratch to kind of future
Hmm.
proof it for, as far as we can. What should I be thinking about? How do I think about kind of data architecture, systems architecture that could, be the right way forward as opposed to perhaps, where my competitors might be?
So first of all, throughout all these organizations, and it depends where you are, like everybody's on a different journey and the size of your organization. Commercial real estate and the real estate industry has had very fragmented data or data sets for years, and it's been even before the whole Gen AI. We were already starting to use machine learning methodologies and things like that to make it easier, right? We're already starting to use natural language processing and things like that to extract the data. So what I tell people to think about when it comes to this, and you're talking about future proofing, and I probably will sound like a broken record. I always say we go back to basics and we go back to the business strategy, right? So what's your vision for your business? What is your business strategy? What are those 4 buckets, right? And then there's an outcome, right? Tied with that, a business outcome. Okay, so based on that, then let's look at what are the potential use cases, right? It could be due diligence, it could be data extraction, underwriting, it could be looking for new opportunities. And then we have the development and planning side as well that we can do with entitlements and feasibility. And then lastly, there's property management. So what I tell people is based on that, okay, then let's prioritize the use cases. And that use case that we start with, and we start with a pilot, let's start in that area to do the data and start surgically. And rather than boil the ocean, and because when people hear, especially management or an owner, right, you own your own commercial real estate firm, they hear a data project, their eyes glaze over and they're like, it's never going to get done. So we be surgical, we get the pilot done, we test it out, then you tweak it and you get it into production. Then you can figure out like the next use case. It's the crawl, walk, run. And then you will learn a lot in just your experimenting and moving quickly. If you go and you do everything, you'll never start to learn, get more confident, and do that. And then from that, I tell people also the other thing I say to them to make it simple when it comes to data and data foundations, start simply with cataloging your data for that use case and literally what the definitions are, because what the meaning of one definition for you, I was just talking about someone recently, then they were talking about sales of 2 different people in their organization. Sales meant one thing with the salesperson and another thing for the finance person, right? So you really want to basically get that all squared away. It's a simple thing, and that simple thing will help, and then you can repeat that process over and over again.
Right. The concept of structured information versus unstructured information is something that I think for a long time has been seen as like, okay, well, generally we want to structure our information for better use. With these language models getting better to effectively take unstructured and convert it to structured information, is that, say, competitive advantage of, having catalogs or data cleanliness kind of like losing, say, steam there? Or is there still very much an advantage of just getting this thing
Yeah.
right?
What people don't understand is if you think about AI right now, right, we had the traditional methods, right? Natural language processing and things like that, speech to text. Then we moved to Gen AI, which is creating content, summarizing things, synthesizing information, right? And the next foray that we're moving into is agentic AI and agentic solutions. And as you move on that continuum, that meets you in like your operating and your workflows in your organization, right? And you need to, when you're getting into a process that you're going to bring in the machine to do your due diligence, to do your risk mitigation, your monitoring and all that, you need to do a lot of documentation, the handoffs, who does what, where does the human come in? The human's still not gone away, right? So if there's someone approving, hey, a certain investment of a certain size or deal size, it has to be authorized. Well, you're going to have to, put that all in, document it, figure it out. It doesn't go away. And actually, it's even more important and the data catalogs and everything, because when you go and you do agentic, it can basically steamroll even faster the issue you have with the data and the information, like through the organization. So let's say, you were doing something, right, looking at the risk in your companies and your portfolio, and some data was off, or like from the information you collect on that company, and you could miss something in your portfolio that's having an issue, right, with the retention of tenants, or being able to rent properties out. That is cost you money, right? Or if you are trying to get now smart buildings and getting all the digitization of monitoring the building and what needs to be fixed, right? That's costing you money, or energy efficiency. So those things do help and they matter because there's also a lot of metadata and information and linking of all this content. So you really need the data linked, mapped, cataloged. And there are tools now that help you to do this. There are agentic tools that can even help you with this. We're even working on some of our own to actually help with the more of the data management side and data prep side so that
Right.
the models are better. So it's
Mm.
a lot of people don't understand that your documents are not necessarily AI ready, but there are ways to do that. And then also with your structured data. And then even when you put it in a structured database, then there's different ways you can actually, different things you could do or whatnot with the relationships with it to make decisions.
As I think this, I'm thinking, holy moly, okay, I need to move quick. I don't know if my documentation is AI ready. Someone quick help. How do I think about like the kinds of people that I need to start thinking about bringing onto our team to kind of help us on the receiving end? So let's say we hire some like Sapient Advisors. Who on my end should be kind of on the receiving end of kind of helping facilitate this process? Is it a new kind of role? Is it a some sort of a it certainly not doesn't feel like it would just be like an IT. This feels like kind of core
No,
to
yeah,
business
it's
intelligence.
not just an I. If you make this just an IT thing, it's not going to work because I've talked to CTOs and CIOs who are like, oh, we're trying out OpenAI, we're trying these other
Right.
tools. I'm using this. We're doing some pilots. We're using Copilot. How's it going? I can't get the use cases from the business side. So you need to have it really, it's throughout the whole organization. It's not just senior leaders, it's people, middle management, people who are doing the work, the users, and it's also cross functional. So, because when you're doing something like this, right, you may have things that have to go to legal and compliance. They need to weigh in, right, of what we're doing with like the due diligence or whatnot or contracts. So they have to, so everybody has to come to the table in designing it and all that. So, and that's also how you get adoption of these tools is by having it cross functionally. So, what I say to people is we start very simply with the business strategy, sitting down with you, going through what your goal is, and then how do we go and prioritize the use cases based on impact, visibility, feasibility, and then we start small. We iterate. We like to empower our clients. We can advise you. We like to empower them that you can go on and do this yourselves ultimately. I think the key is having someone who can help translate what the business is doing to the technologists, whether it's internal or external. And there's also build versus buy versus partner decisions as well that you can go about that.
Right. How I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but in a time when we're moving from, the last 10, 20 years of software eating the world, we've built a lot of tools and a lot of software, a
Mhm.
lot of project management apps and all the software tooling that we use today. But we're shifting into a kind of a done for you environment where now services and effectively software is becoming services. It feels like there's a profound shift in that we're collapsing workflows that typically were done by humans. So while we might see a few new jobs being opened up for folks to structure these AI agents, these systems, these infrastructure, I can't help but to think like, but we're ultimately going to need less humans. How do you come to a different conclusion, or do you see it the same way? How what's
I think I see a different conclusion. There was a study done recently where they were actually looking at organizations that have done more with AI and coming into the organization and with successfully implementing transformation and actually increase in job hiring. I think what happens is you kind of think about it, and this has happened even first with the engineers and coding. It's like everyone thought, "Oh, we're not going to have any engineers, right?" But what's happened is you freed them up from having to do these code reviews, this debugging, right? Creating
right?
things that were kind of mundane tasks. And the hard part has always been in software engineering, has always been the integrations and all that. But at the same time, you also have given people tools to, like, let's say 10x themselves where they can do more, right? And now they have more ideas and they can produce more. The same would apply in commercial real estate, where I started working with a customer who wants to go from 20 deals a year to 40 deals a year. Well, how am I going to get there? Well, if I want to get there, let's look at like some of the operational efficiencies and things you have, and the due diligence and the contracts, all that take a great deal of time, like 10 hours per contract. Let's cut that
Yeah.
down, right, considerably. It still will do the initial contract and we'll put it together, but then now somebody reviews it, right? And that's not the 10 hours per contract. So if you actually want to get there and you can actually end up doing more, you're going to do more, you're still going to need those people, right? So
Right.
I basically, and there's new roles also being created due to AI in organizations as well, depending upon the size. But I think there are opportunities for people to even have do things they were never able to do before. Maybe you weren't able to stress test your portfolio as much, or things like that, which you would want to do, or spend as much time looking at some new areas that you may want to go into with your business or the research or whatnot, scanning for new opportunities.
You've been in and around software, data, machine learning for some time. And now where you're sitting, what are you most excited about right now? You mentioned this kind of continuum here. What's keeping you awake? What's exciting for you?
To me, I think the most exciting thing is think about the things like you've wanted to do for a long time, whether it's professional or personal, right? And you haven't been able to do it, right? You haven't you spend 80% of your time on this admin work, right? Now you can think about, hey, okay, I can use some creativity with my business or a new product, something new, and I can, try it out. And the great thing too, what I think is great too, is there's a couple, and then also what I love too is for non-technical founders, you can try things out without having to spend a lot of money either, right? Because it doesn't take a lot to put a prototype together. It doesn't take as much time, and you can actually try these things out faster and start to, play with them and get results. So you can actually do more and you can empower yourself, right? So I know I have like agents that look at things or information for myself, helps me with my day, whatnot, looking at speaking opportunities, things like that. But also you can have an agent looking for new opportunities for you to invest in, or potential buyers of a property or people to target, right? So I think that you can end up doing more or do more things that you weren't able to do or do them better. So that's, and maybe and get to recreate organizations or the roles. And maybe there are things that are people don't have to be sitting there doing that manual work, for lack of a better term. They can do higher value, more rewarding work. That's I like to be the glass half full, the
Exactly,
optimist.
exactly. Maribeth, this has been super fun, and I think a great reminder in that I think as things quickly evolve, the very fact that we're able to continuously focus on some of the higher value work is really where I'm most excited about. For those that want to follow your journey, or want to work with you, how do they find you?
Sure, they can find me on LinkedIn at Maribeth Martorana. It's MaribethMartorana. And then also, you can also find me on my Substack, Strategy Signal, as well as if you want to just send me an email, it's Maribeth at sapient-advisors.com.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
Maribeth, thanks so
this has
much.
been great. Thank you so much, Jose. This is wonderful. And I thank everyone. And any questions you may have, wondering, please feel free to contact me. It's been a pleasure.